everybody, welcome back to myHogwarts.com's Learn to Crochet series. This is Rebecca, and we have been learning a lot of interesting stitches, different lengths, different increases and decreases, and now in this last tutorial episode I'm going to show you how to crochet in the round. So this is a technique that's really useful for a lot of different things. For example, amigurumi, which is crocheting stuffed animals. You'll notice here that basically we start in the middle and you just kind of spiral outwards. And then you can shape that into any sort of three-dimensional object. You can make a hat. You can make any sort of object that is round or, flat or shaped that you can start from a circle, from a point. So I'm going to show you how to do that. It's very simple. For the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to just be using the single crochet stitch. So as we remember from the very first lesson, you start with a slip stitch, as always. And this is the basic standard way to start crocheting in the round. You just chain 3. Alright, and then we're going to make this into a loop, right? But just a really tiny little loop. So we're going to actually stick our hook into the very first stitch here. And just slip stitch into that. So you pull the yarn through the stitch and then through the last loop, right? Now it's very tiny, and that is the point. And so you'll see basically anywhere in here you can kind of stick your hook in, but this is basically the center right here. If you kind of widen it a little bit, then you can see there's the hole there. So this is the middle of the round. And so we're going to start here, tighten up that loop again. And we've got our hook in here, so we're ready to do a single crochet, right? So go ahead and just do that. Pull your loop through, single crochet. So that's one stitch. You want to put 6 single crochet in this loop, all right? The first row can be a bit tricky. Just keep sticking your hook into the same center loop, right? Here's stitch number 3. All these 6 stitches go in the same hole. Stitch 4. And if you'll notice here, I'm actually holding the tail end underneath. Basically, I'm holding it against the chain loop so that it just gets tucked underneath, and then you don't actually have to weave in the end later. I just find that to be a handy little tool. Alright, so get rid of that tail. So you see we have the 6 stitches here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When you get to the end of the row, you can either slip stitch into the first stitch, like that, and then chain 1 and continue on as a completely new row. But then what that's going to give you is sort of a seam down the back of your work. Like there would be sort of a row of slip stitches that you would notice. So instead of doing that, what I like to do, and what is usually going to be recommended for amigurumi and for a lot of different purposes, it gives you a more seamless look, is you just go ahead and start crocheting again. Just single crochet right into that first stitch. Alright? And because it's not super obvious, because it's seamless, it's not going to be really obvious where the rows begin and end, and you want to keep track of your stitches. That's where you'll use a stitch marker. When you go to the store to buy stitch markers, they're just going to be in like the same area of the craft store that you find your hooks and needles. You want to make sure you're going to see different kinds of stitch markers. Some are just going to be a loop, and they're not, just like this, they're not openable, they're just a circle. These are used for knitting. If you put them in your crochet, they're never coming out again. So you better really like what they look like, because those are not the kind that will work for you. The kind that open like this can be used for crochet. You can also use a safety pin or a paper clip, or just like a hook earring if you're not going to be, putting it in a bag and don't have to worry about it falling out. Anything basically that can sort of hook into the stitch. So we've done this first stitch, so we want to remember that this is the first stitch of the second row. So just stick it right there. Go ahead and latch it so it doesn't fall out. And then we'll keep going. So you'll notice we did 6 stitches for the first row. That's a rule of thumb for when you're working flat. We're going to make a flat circle. You want 6 stitches in the first row, and then you want to increase by 6 stitches for every row after that. So row 2 is going to have 12 stitches. So since you've got 6 stitches, you want to make 12, we're just going to do 2 single crochet in each stitch. Very simple. So we've done 1. Now here's stitch number 2. It's a little bit tight at the beginning of this, which is good because you don't want your stuffing to fall out. Alright, and I'm just going to do 2 single crochet in each single crochet around until we hit our stitch marker. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There we go. So that's row 2, and you'll see it's starting to come together and it's starting to lie a little bit more flat. Now we're going to go ahead and increase again by another 6 stitches for round 3. So this row has 12, the next row is going to have 18, and so instead of 2 in every stitch, we're going to do 2 single crochet in every other stitch. So we're going to insert in here, take out the stitch marker, do our first single crochet, and this is stitch 1 of the new round, so we'll mark this new stitch. So you just got to pull out the stitch marker and put it back in for every row so that you don't lose your place. So that was 1 single crochet, and now 2 single crochet in the next stitch. Alright, then 1 single crochet in the next stitch, 2 single crochet in the next stitch. And so on all the way around. Alright, so there we go, and you'll see it just keep going and going. So we've got 18 in this one, you'll have 24 in the next, so instead of 1 stitch, 2 in the next, it'll be 2 stitches and then 2 in the next. So single, single, increase, single, single, increase. And then the row after that, you'll have 3 stitches between each increase. If you keep doing it that way, you will start to see sort of a hexagon pattern form. If you kind of look here, you can sort of see some angles here. There's edge, edge, edge. That'll become more and more pronounced. You can combat that by kind of staggering your increases, putting the increase along the edge instead of at the corner. That just involves some math, so that's really up to you. You can kind of block that and it won't be an issue. And it really just depends on your project, of course. Maybe you want a hexagon. I'm just going to show you, I'm not going to keep going and going because you understand how this works. You can get to, a whole rug, a whole big round rug just using this technique. I'm going to pull out the stitch marker because we're going to say that this is the end of what we're making here. And I'm just going to show you how we finish it off. So you're just going to want to make sure that you slip stitch into the next stitch to kind of pull it down so that we've got a flush edge. And then whenever we're finishing off, just take that tail. You can cut it as long as you like. doesn't have to be super short. Again, don't worry about saving yarn. This much isn't going to be a deal breaker. So we've cut our end, and then you really just yarn over it and pull it through, and then just keep pulling. And go ahead and pull that tight, and then that's your knot. That's how you finish it off. You'll take a darning needle, or you can actually just use your hook and pull this edge around through the different stitches, just kind of along with the yarn that's already there. That's called weaving in the ends, and then you've got a nice little finished piece. So you'll notice within the round, not only is it a circle, obviously, instead of a rectangle, but you see that we are working on one side the whole time, whereas when we were working back and forth, we have the front of the stitch, the back of the stitch, right? Every other row. Here we've got the front of the stitch all on one side, and the back of the stitch all on the other side. This is, of course, analogous to stockinette in knitting, if you're familiar with knitting. Just the difference is that crochet doesn't have reverse stitches the way knitting has a purl. If you don't knit, don't worry about it. That's not important. But that's basically how you make a circle. You can keep working those 6 increases per row to keep getting the flat piece. If you do fewer increases per row, like say if you were to suddenly stop increasing at this point and just start working around straight, just one single crochet in each stitch, then what you would end up with is a tube, right? And you could make that into like the leg of a teddy bear or something. Or if you start doing fewer, say doing 3 or 4 increases per row instead, or per round instead of 6, then you'll start to get a gradual tapering off, and it's not going to be flat, it'll be kind of curved. Or, you know, it would make like a cone if you kept going at that indefinitely. So you can kind of start flat, like when you're making a hat, right? You start flat until you get to like the crown of the head, and then you do fewer increases and fewer until you do none at all for the very end, and you've just got the tube bit that goes around your temples. So that's how you can shape things to make different shapes. Like for example, with Octi here, started out, actually I believe I started at the bottom with this guy. There we go, that's the beginning. Started at the bottom, started flat until I believe around the time that I started working on the legs. And then I just, you know, a few rows of gradually increasing a little bit less. Here I was not increasing at all, and then I started decreasing, and that's where you get that curve inwards, and you just keep decreasing until you have enough stitches that you can just pull the last few stitches through at the same time and kind of slip them all together. And so that's how you make a ball. And you can really make any sort of shape. I mean, just Google amigurumi and you will see the incredible little stuffed animals that people make. So it's just a really handy technique to be able to work in the round. If you think this hole in the middle is going to be too big for your purposes, I would encourage you to just look up the magic loop method. That's not something that's it's a bit more of an advanced method, but it is very effective if you want something that can be cinched even tighter. Alright, so that is what we've got for our series, guys. That's basically everything I have to teach you. The last thing I want to impart is just how to read patterns. So that's going to be the next and final episode, is how to read a pattern. And we're going to be making a coffee cup cozy and using several of the different techniques we've been learning throughout the series to make one project together. So keep an eye out for that, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.